Hey friends, welcome back to Twists and Turns. In this episode, we're going to be taking you back to our short but unforgettable era as roommates. It only lasted a few months but was full of fun and meaningful memories. So today, we're going to be reminiscing, reflecting, and talking about what that season meant to us and reflecting on God's provision along the way all through, you guessed it, the twists and turns. So join us for the roommate episode. Welcome to Twists and Turns, Confessions of Lifelong BFFs. Two best friends who know where the bodies are buried, metaphorically.
After more than 20 years of friendship, we've survived chaos, heartbreak, answered prayers, questionable choices, and plenty of twists.
We're not experts, influencers, or internet debaters.
Just two friends talking honestly about faith, friendship, and God's goodness through all of it.
As always, let's pray. Dear God, we would just like to take a moment and remember why we're here today. The reason we are here is to share our story, not for our own benefit and to glorify our story, but to remember who you are and where you have been in our lives. We just want to thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this friendship. Be with us as we go through this conversation talking about the good times and the good things that you gave us. And so just be with us, and we love you. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Welcome back, everyone. First of all, oh my goodness, we had a little hiatus and we are back and better than ever. Helena's got a kicking haircut. Ooh,
Hey,
ooh.
ooh, you got to spice it up sometimes, got to change it.
Yes, exactly. But it was a good thing. It ended up being lots of really good conversation. And in our hiatus, we had this thought of this conversation about this time that we were roommates. And why are we doing this? Why are we having this conversation? What's your why this time, Helena?
Like you mentioned, it kind of, the idea I don't think was part of kind of our original list. And so when you initially, I believe it was your idea where you were kind of like, hey, like this was a time that we should probably talk about. When you said that, I was like, of course we should talk about when we lived together. That makes perfect sense. And I was like, why didn't we think about that sooner? I think there could be some really good insight to this conversation because as we were kind of preparing and kind of going back and forth, I think it caused some reflection in a way of recognizing some really good things that happened that I hadn't really stopped to reflect on because it was such a busy time, which
Yes.
obviously we'll get into why that was, but it was a busy time for both of us, kind of easy to miss some of the sweetness that was.
And I think too, it's just as we're building this story, we've talked so much about the things that we want to share. And as we've talked, what's risen to the surface for me is, well, we got to tell the story first before we start, trying to branch off and have all these other conversations. This is sort of just tying more of the story together. We've talked a little bit about what the beginning and the middle looked like. And a lot of this podcast is the middle. It's certainly some of it is now, and some of it, it started twisty and turny in the beginning as well, but a lot of it is the middle, and we want to expand on the middle. And so this is an important part of the middle, even though it was such a small piece of it. But there's so much around it that I think we can introduce ourselves to y'all a little bit more. So you can get to know us a little bit better in our friendship. I also just think this is so beneficial for anyone who is entering into a roommate situation or is currently in a roommate situation or is reflecting on a time in the past maybe and maybe can do it with some fresh eyes, maybe with more gratitude, maybe with more introspection. Also, as we spoke, we really recognized God's faithfulness and his provision because there's so many things that had to happen just so that we couldn't have possibly planned so that we would live together. I love that piece of it. So I'm excited to share that.
Let's just do it.
Let's
Like,
do
we
it.
kind of have to give a little bit of backstory, though, I think, why this happened. Like
Yes.
where we kind of were at that point, right? And then, because it kind of happened like really quickly. Like, you
It
were like,
happened
hey,
quickly, but it didn't happen sooner in our friendship. This was not right out of high school or in
correct.
college or anything. It didn't happen that way.
No,
It
not
was
quickly in the sense of timeline with our friendship, but the decision
Oh,
was like,
yes.
this is an option. What do you think? And then it was like, here I come.
And why do you think that was? From your perspective, why was it so quick? Maybe that's helpful to just do the flyover, explain the timeline. Immediately leading up to that, like, that got you to the point where you were looking for a roommate and considering me as an option.
Yeah, well, I was working my first big girl job. And so I was already kind of out of the house, living with another friend. I was dating this gentleman who proposed. That was nowhere on my radar.
Are you
Everybody,
serious?
I'm serious. Everybody's like, you seriously were not surprised. And I thought to myself, sure. Like, this is where I learned about the way my brain works a little bit. Like, sure, I had this romanticized idea of being married and all the things that would happen with that. But I had never really thought, like, oh, it needs to happen by this time. I like would have liked to have some sense of security in that it would eventually happen, but like not that it needed to happen at a certain time. And so the fact that it happened when it did genuinely caught me off guard. But I think had it been, any longer, I probably would have maybe thought, maybe. And two, like, to be fair, like, our friend group was like, nobody was married
No,
or
you
like
were the
getting
trailblazer. You
married.
were the pioneer woman of stable relationship for sure.
Right. Well, so like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're kind of like in a tight knit group of friends and everybody's getting engaged and married, you're probably thinking like, well, what about me? So like that wasn't on my radar because we were just like a great group of friends that were having a fun time together. I would have FOMO if if I didn't get to enjoy this. So all that to say, I found myself in a position where my new fiance was living in a different state. And I was thinking, holy smokes, I'm going to have to, transfer my job, which thankfully I found was a possibility. So I was like, job check, plan a wedding, what in the world, and all the things that entailed. That included getting out of my current lease and kind of preparing for this big life shift. I was able to do so and end my lease, and then I wasn't sure where I was going to go. And that's where you entered.
Yeah. If I look back on it and I think about the place that you had just graduated college. Well, I mean, I say just. You had been in the working world for a little while. Your now husband, then fiance, had been in the working world for a little bit longer, and you had been dating long distance for a little while, and you had some family in town. And so it was like you're kind of weighing this of like, do I move back in with family? What do can I save a little bit of money before I'm getting married? And that's what I remember.
And so, but you kind of like had this beautiful opportunity. Life stage wise, I feel like we were all kind of in the same place, but you kind of had this like rare opportunity for me to kind of take advantage of.
Yes, super providentially. I didn't plan that. I had just moved home after a long-term project where I was living in New York. I was living in New York City and it was incredible. Like
I
I,
was
it was
definitely living vicariously through you. 100%.
Oh, man, it was the best. Like, I lived right downtown, and I got to my commute to work was 2 train stops away, and I was having a blasty blast, and so I had just come home from that, and I didn't come home to much comparatively, I guess. Everyone was living their lives, and I didn't have a place to stay when I came home. I had left sort of as my lease had expired previously, and so I was coming and finding a new place. What happened is our mutual friend lived in this neighborhood. She had a real cute place. And I was like,
Mhm.
man, if I could live there, that would be awesome. So I started looking in that area. I found this place that was a 1 bedroom. We're going to paint the picture for you. It's a beautiful picture. But it was old historic neighborhood where a lot of these big, beautiful homes had been converted into multi-unit. And so they're, they were old, but like the good kind of old,
Yeah.
and so I found this one. Long story short, I had gone through the whole process to sign a lease, and something did not sit right about that landlord. There was a question I asked or something, and the way he came back, I was like, I think this is going to be a nightmare. I don't want to do this. Right next door was this adorable home, the same similar situation where it was like just way cuter, in a way better situation. Pretty little front porch and I was like, well, let me just look and see what that one situation is. That was a 2-bedroom, and I think it was the same price or maybe a little less expensive, which was insane
Oh,
because it
wow.
was just a much better unit, like in every way. The landlord had done a great job in converting this previously single family home into 4 units, and I just had this extra bedroom. It was such a surprising thing because I thought surely I'm not going to be able to afford the 2-bedroom if, the 1-bedroom cost this, and they were the same price and it was way better. It was just one of those couldn't have picked it better if I tried. I was very single and sad. So sad. You guys were all so gracious in that time period where I was just a wet blanket. We were mid 20s at this point. I would say, early to mid 20s. We're all sort of starting our professional lives, but it is that friends era thing. We were definitely in that the part of your life where your friends or your family
Yeah.
place. From my perspective, you were thinking out loud about your options and I was like, well, I know you're getting ready to plan a wedding. Your soon to be husband that's a lot of different things to transition all at one time. I think that I have an opportunity to alleviate a little bit of stress. The room that I have that's extra is going to be there whether you're in it or not. So, why don't you come on? And I think it's an important thing to note that we knew what the end date was going to be and it was only a few months.
Right.
What was it? So you were getting married in the fall, and this
Yeah.
happened maybe when?
January, February.
Yeah, because then you moved shortly after that, right? It was
I
only
did.
maybe 4 months? Maybe?
Maybe, yeah, that's about right because I ended up moving before the wedding because my job
Right, you got a
was.
job transfer, which was
Yes,
amazing.
they needed me to start. It wasn't like, "I don't know what I'm doing. I hope it all works out." It was like, "This is a very hard end date. Things are moving in the direction of I'm out of this city." So
Yes. Yeah.
so it
Well, I mean, you
wasn't
had a
like.
place to go. And it wasn't just that you had a place to go. It wasn't like, "Well, I'm getting married, so I'm gonna move in, with my husband." It was, I know that I'm going to be getting married and moving in with my husband and I need a job. And then your current company was like, we got you, girl. Like, come on
Yeah.
up.
I mean, talk about God working and showing off. I mean, honestly, it just was so seamless. If I'm being honest, like I can't even say like, "Oh, well, I prayed so hard and I was so worried and God just answered that prayer." I literally was just like, "You know what would be great is if this could happen." And boom, and I was like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
that was great." And then I was like, couldn't have done that on my own, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like if everybody's being honest with themselves, you can recognize like that wasn't my faithfulness. That was just God providing. And I need to give credit where credit's due because I could
Yes.
not.
He's so much more creative than we are.
Oh, yeah.
It's like you can dream it up in your mind, best case scenario, and he's like, "You don't have as much perspective as I do. So you don't
Right.
even know what best case scenario looks like because you don't know all the variables that exist. So let me show you something." And he did. It was so
Already
sweet.
ahead of you, girl. I got
Yeah.
it.
I wanna talk about why it took us this long because we spent so much time together. We talked about it in high school. We spent so much time together after that. We had our summer that we were unstoppable, that we wish people would have stopped us. Like we I wonder if, the question
Yeah.
is, well, why didn't you do this sooner and why was it such a short period? So from your perspective, why did this not happen sooner?
My laser focus was you got to get through school. It just needs to get done. Like, so whatever is the like path of least resistance, suck it up. I lived at home while, our friend group, I mean, y'all were already kind of living together and having those fun times. And so I would just kind of pack my sleepover bag.
Yes.
And I was just like, I felt like I was in high school again. I'm just like packing on a bag and we would just have sleepovers all the time. So I was like totally taking advantage of the fact that you guys were in that roommate phase. And I was just like, well, I'm still in school and living at home, but we have these plans. We're going to have fun. And it wasn't like you guys were like ever not inviting. Like it was like, well, it just makes sense. Just like pack a bag or like, just get ready at our house or come from school and just we're going to do this thing. I was like, well, I'm going to just live at home and get through school. Financially, I was terrified. So that path of least resistance in my mind was just stay at home and get this done. I never even entertained that thought because it
Yeah.
just felt so unattainable.
Just the rent piece of it.
Yeah, the expenses. Like, I just like the whole idea of having to be financially responsible for everything. I was terrified of debt. I was trying to be as financially responsible as I could, and that meant staying at home to get through school. You ladies were all very gracious to kind of allow me to still participate.
We were all doing it to each other too. It wasn't like, so it was like we all lived in kind of different parts of town. So it wasn't
Yes.
just you crashing at each of our places, like we would crash at each other's places. So if we're going out in this part of
Yeah.
town tonight, then we're staying over at this friend's house. And if we're coming to this side, then you're staying here and you weren't the outlier in that by any means.
It kind of like, I feel like it was like, what is the overall plan that we're all in on? How do we all get there dressed and cute? And like, how are we getting home? Like,
Yes.
and who's home?
Yes. That was it in a nutshell.
You had a very different thought process that I was like, I mean, I see that, but like totally not even on my radar.
That's interesting. Yes, I do. First of all, we did go our separate ways for a little while because I was across the country, and then you
Mhm.
were in a different city for a little while for school
Yeah.
and things like that. And so part of it was proximity. And then for me, once I moved home, I just knew how different we were. One, I
Yeah.
knew how messy I was and how clean you are. Also, just how different we are personality-wise, and so I thought, I really don't want our friendship to suffer for living together because it is a different thing. And so I intentionally avoided that. The consideration in my mind when I moved home, I mean, I moved home and moved back in with my parents for a few months until I got back on my feet, but my consideration for roommates, like, certainly you were in my mind, and I was like, "I don't wanna do that. I need her as a friend." But that's too close for both of us for it to be beneficial. And so,
Mhm.
and actually, I think part of it when I first moved home, I think we struggled because you were in a like footloose and fancy free era, and I was very much in a like wounded, need to heal, no new friends kind of place.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of the friction too. But ultimately, it was I don't want to lose her as a friend. And so I don't want to live together. I don't think that would be a good idea. You ended up introducing me to my first roommate when I moved home, who actually, we're going to talk about it in a little while, but we're going to get an opportunity to talk to at some point. But we got an opportunity to talk to both of our respective roommates right before we moved in with each other. I thought this was such a good idea, Helena, that as we were planning this, we were like, well, it might be helpful to understand the perspective of our respective roommates, what their experience was like with us as roommates. PSA, when you ask someone like, "How did you experience me?" You better hope that your friends are as gracious as our friends were, but also, like, it was so funny to listen to what they said about it was always, like, so introspective, like, "Well, I probably could have been a better roommate." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, you were such a great roommate. You're such a great human." And so anyway, I'd be interested to know from your perspective as we had those conversations with our previous roommates, and we're
Mhm.
talking, like, right before you and I moved in together. So,
Yes. Like, moved
mine was a
from
little further because I had that separation from my time in New York, but for you, it was immediate. It was like from one to the other. It was such a fun exercise for everybody to just get to relive that in a way that was like, we can go and we can pick up this memory and we can revisit it now with all the context that we have and all the experience we have and all the wisdom we have and all the grace that we've given ourselves and other people. And now we can look at it in a different way. What were the things that stood out to you?
Yes, that was so much fun. And you offered the suggestion to kind of go back and forth, like via like video chat on like Marco Polo,
Yeah.
which was one hilarious to watch us kind of get acclimated with the app.
Yes. Wait. Oh, I can't delete. What? It's
What's
fine.
happening?
You're just
Like,
gonna have to deal with this.
oh my gosh! Like if our kids like were older and could see us like operating this, they would be like face palm. Like
Yeah,
I'm
there
sorry.
it was prime, like, boomer era
Yes.
stuff
Oh my
for
gosh,
sure. It was so good.
it was really those first few videos that we watched, like I think we all just really needed a good laugh. So that was a
Yes.
great way to kick it off. I think what was really interesting, I think all of us, I can't remember if you did the same because I think you might have been the one to point it out, started from the place of assuming how terrible we
Yeah.
were
I
as
could
a
have been a better roommate. That's what everybody kept saying.
yeah,
Everybody
it
said I
was
could have
like,
been a better
I'm
roommate.
so sorry, and I remember I probably did this, or I'm probably this was annoying for you to deal with, and that might have come from being a little bit older and wiser and more self-aware. So for that piece of the exercise, maybe that might have been necessary to some extent, but what was really sweet, that was not at all what any of us took away in terms of like the core memories of
About each
those
other.
days living together. Yeah, like we did not think that the other was as terrible as they thought they were.
Yeah.
um,
And our friend said, and this was really funny because she was like, wow, I'm deeply concerned about the level of memory that I don't have. And
right.
she did a little bit of research. And one of the things she said is like, if you're not constantly revisiting those memories, your brain kind of replaces it with just a vibe. But
Yeah.
then if you can go back and you can start to think like, okay, what car was I driving and where was I working and those kind of things, you will start to get more memory. So don't worry, we're not all early onset Alzheimer's, I hope. But I thought that
Right.
was so helpful that she was like, she sat with it and was like, I have concerns, and then kind of came back with
Yes.
that.
But not only that, but like we were just kind of building off of each other where it was like, oh my gosh, yes. And
Yep.
then it kind of was this domino effect. It triggered the next memory and the
Yes.
next thought. And it was just really fun. It was just so different from where we all currently are. And the fact that we can sit together years later, not to say that we didn't have conflicts, because we did address some of those, but in a way where it was just water under the bridge. And we were like, yeah, that happened. But like, man, did I love that time in our friendship and how grateful we were to just have each other. There were things that, our friend that I lived with brought up, and I was like, oh, yeah, like we did have those conversations where she was able to just listen when I felt like I was in a place where I didn't know how to process things.
What's interesting too is her feedback to herself was, I realized I could have listened more. And I was like, that's so interesting because she was a good, especially in a one on one setting. She has always been really empathetic and just very intentional about listening and being attuned. So it's
Mhm.
funny to hear her criticism of herself being like, I could have asked more questions. Like, yeah, we probably all could have asked more questions in our early 20s. Are you kidding
Yeah.
me? Like,
It's so funny though too because I think we all need to remember, and maybe if anybody who's listening kind of like holds any resentment towards somebody or just kind of like has any type of vibe that they've kind of replaced, some memories with, it's like it was so cathartic to kind of like remember we thought that life was so hard during that time, and not to say that there were not hard things, But it was also really carefree in the sense that we were able to decide what we were going to do with our evenings and
Yes.
with our,
Oh my
our
god.
day off was literally a
A
day
day
off.
off. Yeah, you
And
wanna sleep till 3? Sleep till 3.
right. Do you want to go get brunch? That was always something, that was like kind of kicked off that brunch era. I don't know if that was like kind of a trendy thing at the time.
Yeah. So what did you hear your roommate say about you and your experience? Like, what were the memories that stuck out from her observation and even just from our talking about you and you as a roommate?
I think I was very grateful that whenever she was reflective, the things that I always felt like insecure about, she was like, no, I understand why. And she reminded me, she's like, because we talked about it. And I was like, oh, I totally forgot. We probably, yeah, we did talk about it. And you did listen, you know? She just was somebody that I felt very naturally comfortable confiding in. I feel like my insecurities around what I know were how I operated back then. Like, I felt like, oh my gosh, like she probably thought I was so rude or probably wondered why I did these things. And I felt this need to kind of like explain, to not defend, but to hopefully allow her to feel like a sense of comfort. And it wasn't her, it was me. And she was like, what are you talking about?
She
So,
literally said, "That's roommates. Sometimes that's roommates," you know?
right. Whereas I'm like, I need to be clean because that's what a good roommate does. I need to be social. All these things that I kind of thought I needed to be, she was not sitting there holding anything against me, which,
Yeah, if anything, when you pulled out the steam cleaner on the tile, I think it scared everyone half to death.
let me tell
In
you,
fact, I remember that. I remember hearing about that. She steam cleaned the tile, and I was like, "Ooh, Lord."
it definitely was the awakening of my inner Monica.
Yes. Yes, which we're gonna talk about when we talk about moving into ours. Here are
Sure.
the things that I took away from what she said, just practical stuff. Like, she said you were really in your Italian era. So
Yeah.
you're like all the Italian food, like lots of Italian food, and just being on opposite schedules. You know, it's a time where you're like, you're just totally different. Like, she was in a different season than you were, and so there wasn't a lot of time for, 1, conflict,
Hmm.
2, a whole lot of consistent interaction. And so there were these shorter interactions.
We worked in different industries, so our schedules were very opposite. So I remember being sad about that too. I had this idea of what us living together was going to be like, and then it not happening and being like, oh, I miss my friend.
Yes. So
Yeah.
for mine, we remembered the same things and understood the same things, I think, from the same perspective. I think that she also was pretty hard on herself with some of the stuff that it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think you should lay that down and not pick it up anymore. That's not a thing. But one of the things she said was the same thing as me, you know, where I was concerned about living with you because I didn't want to lose the friendship. She and I didn't know each other that well. You guys were friends while I was not living in the same place as y'all. And we both had an understanding that we had a lot going on in our lives personally in that moment. And we did not want to move in with someone who was going to take things personal if we needed a minute or if we didn't want to be social. The divine joke of that is that we did end up becoming very, very close friends because we were going through a lot of the same things, come to find out.
Yeah.
And the timing of those things worked so beautifully because, you know, I would experience something and then she would experience it right after me. And so I could empathize and kind of understand, and vice versa. There were just things that it was like, I need to say this out loud to someone and I can't say it to anybody else because nobody is going to understand this, but you're literally living it. And I just need to say it. And she would just listen. And that was so sweet. And we
Yeah.
had, you know, we lived in 2 different places together. We became such good friends through that experience. My favorite thing she said, she's blonde, bless her heart, and her family is all blonde. And so obviously I am not. She was so sweet, even in how she said this to me.
I
She was like,
know.
you know,
just
you had this
on
beautiful
brand.
brunette hair and I just didn't grow up with that. And she's like, I just didn't realize how much hair there was going to be everywhere. And I was like, yeah, there is a lot of hair, isn't there? And she's like, I probably have a lot of hair too, but it's blonde. And like, you don't have to justify that. Yes, there was a ton of hair everywhere all the time. And I was not, diligently vacuuming it either. And so what stuck out was we didn't take things personally, and that allowed us to become good friends. We
Mhm.
didn't come into it with an expectation, and so there was just grace there. When we did have conflict, it didn't go further than the conflict, and that was true on both sides, and so those were things that I appreciated her saying and recognized that, yeah, I feel the same way. She's like, we were relatively around, we were wearing the same clothes, and so we basically had 2 closets. It was like you just go into hers and she comes into mine, and, that felt fun. We both had cute clothes in our own right, but sometimes it just feels cuter to take somebody else's cute clothes. And so that's the place that we were at. I hope that paints a picture of the people that we were, the things that we were going through and sort of coming out of as we moved in with each other. And so now, the moment you've all been waiting for, we're going to talk about our roommate situation. Now that we've talked about our perspectives of like other people's perspectives and things like that, I'd love to hear your perspective. We'll start with a vibe and then we'll fill in the details.
I mean, I think it was a feeling of excitement, just kind of knowing the reason why this was going to be a temporary place.
Yes.
Kind of being in that mindset, like we knew how special every moment was. If there was an opportunity to go, if our schedules aligned where that was a possibility, it wasn't even like a hesitation. We just did it. I'm really grateful for that piece where it was like, yeah, it's like our yes was, it was like, yep, we're going to do that. Hey, yep, we're going there.
Yeah.
I do remember, and this is just like me probably overthinking what I thought a good roommate was supposed to be. It was like leave no trace. I thought being a good roommate meant I left it better than I found it. I never stopped to consider how that would have been perceived by the other person. Like, because I feel like, and it may have even been said to me, and I was like, I'm still gonna do it. But like, because like, there's a couple reasons. One, like I feel most at peace when my surroundings are orderly. I have come to learn in many years of therapy that that I mean, I laugh, but it's true. But like also like that was my way of showing that I'm being considerate. Like I'm thinking of you and that I don't want you to come home and think, you think I want to clean up your mess? Like so it was definitely a hard pendulum swing. But like at that time, I really thought I was trying. It was like, well, this is just what it means to be a good roommate. So,
You were an incredible roommate. The level of cleanliness was always it's gotten better as I have gotten more orderly and, my brain is now fully developed, but at the time, for many years, it was so intimidating. But that was kind of the benefit of the space that we were in. And, I know we talked about this before, but it bears repeating. So the day you moved in, I came home from work, again, opposite schedules, different industries. And so I came home from work and I opened the door. Michael Jackson is blaring.
oh yeah.
I smell cleaning solution. And Helena comes around the corner with her rubber gloves, dancing as she is cleaning. At that point, we had known each other long enough that I was like, I don't know why I should be surprised. Like, this is, whatever. But you were so happy. Like, you were joyful. It wasn't like you were walking around irritated at the state of the apartment. It was just like, I'm cleaning. And because that apartment was old historic home, like original floors from turn of the century,
Right.
last century, even in your diligence in your cleaning, which I did clean that apartment. I kept it relatively orderly, but
Oh
yours was
yeah. It
on
wasn't
another
like a
level.
dump by any
No.
means.
No, no, no. Like it was everything was, you didn't walk in and to clutter and stuff. Like my bedroom, different story maybe, but all the common areas, like
Right.
it was fine. But there was just a level that you were never gonna touch because it was just there was so much life that had been lived in those spaces. You can't undo a century worth of that, and so it never bothered me in that apartment because I always walked in and felt the same lived in feel, even if I could smell Clorox.
Oh,
But I love that your thought was, I want to be a good roommate. I think that's something that someone in my family everyone really respects. That's one of their mantras is leave things better than you found it. And really has raised, the generations before them up in that. And I think that's such an important thing, not for the recognition of it, but just because it's the thing to do. Like, just that's the
right.
person you want to be. You want eulogy attributes, not resume attributes. And that's one of those eulogy attributes is like she left everything better than she found it. The physical stuff, the emotional stuff. Like, I think there's something to that's just who you are. And it's funny because the cleaning part, I experienced it and was like, ugh, but I love that mindset. And I think we would all stand to do better in that. So
As we were kind of going through, just reflecting on that time and that era, you mentioned how this was the time in your life, you had found a different church. The church leadership took time and care
mhm.
to ensure that you were being led well. I literally just had this memory. It's not that I didn't recognize that you were going through that. I think it was still a time for me where I was like, it's not that I'm disinterested in what you're doing. It's just my heart is not longing for it the same way or at the same level that your heart is longing for this something deeper, right? And it was like I just specifically remember watching you kind of starting this next step and journey in your relationship with the Lord and observing it without vocalizing what I was
Mhm.
observing. I told you, if you remember, I mean, it's still true. I just feel like I remember thinking to myself at that time, like we were going out having fun and like, relatively, we weren't like getting like in
Yeah.
trouble. We were just going out as friends and having fun. I just remember seeing you kind of make that shift, taking it really seriously, thinking to myself, it was really pure and sweet to recognize like we had seen each other do
All the things.
all the things, right? It's like, those friends, siblings, that's like you can't try to act like you are all that.
Yeah.
You can't be self-righteous when somebody has witnessed all
Yeah.
the things.
You know
Right?
what I know.
You
Yeah.
it's like ain't nobody got a high horse here, right?
Mhm.
Watching you during that time and thinking to myself, well, if God is seeking you and you're answering that call and just kind of watching that relationship blossom and your love and desire grow, why would that not be an option for me? I don't even know that I would have been able to have articulated that exact thought at that time because I was just watching it.
There were a couple of things there. Like, that apartment was the place that I fell in love with Jesus.
Mhm.
And it was as simple as asking for the first time, "What do you say about this?" Rather than trying to find ways to make scripture support what I wanted to do. It was the silliest of things. It was like just a thing that I thought I wanted, that I knew just at a soul level was not good for me or anyone else, and trying to find a way to get the Bible to support that. And finally, it was as simple as saying, "Well, what do you say about this?" And not from before it was always, I want to be able to justify my actions. And this was the first time it was like, "But what do you actually say?" And it was, I mean, not an audible voice, but it was "I'm so glad you asked." When the Bible talks about streams of living water, like, I experienced that, and I have visual memories of so many places in that apartment where those revelations started to happen, where I actually started to have relationship with Jesus. And it's so crazy because if you looked at the exterior of my life in that time, if you weren't in proximity like you were, if it were just, a ordinary everyday person that's not in close relationship, I'm sure they wouldn't have noticed because it did not look, on paper, the way that the transformation was happening in my heart. And so it's sweet to hear you witness to that because
Mhm.
I was experiencing it. But I also know that most people were looking at me like, she needs to get her stuff together. Bless her heart.
Wasn't like, oh wow, she's like going on a mission trip tomorrow, kind of like this Christianese, like I'm on fire for Jesus, and you're just
No,
like out passing out tracks. It wasn't like that.
you
You
won't
know,
ever see me doing that, by the way. So
but
it's
no,
a,
it was like I think it was more like I was seeing both sides of it. You were never turned away. You were still trying to figure it out. It wasn't like I got it now. It was like I'm wrestling with understanding something and trying to break a habit of the way that I've lived my life, and how that's potentially separating me from a better and deeper relationship with the Lord. I was right there with you, right? Like I was right there in the trenches. We were doing it together. And I had at that point, found a church that I was attending too, but like just for whatever reason, I could tell like, yes, I was approaching things differently for the first time for myself, but like also recognizing like something different was kind of and deeper was happening with you at that time.
I was falling in love. And on that note, kind of in a similar way, you were starting your life with someone, whereas I was not. Because you were living with me, I got to see some things. I mean, that ministered to me so much, which same thing. It's like, certainly there are things in your courtship that both of you would love to go back and do differently, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter. Like God still used it because in those moments, as I was wrestling with how can I fit a square peg into a round hole, as it were, how can I make this, how can I will this into being, something that I think I really want that I don't actually really want. I was getting a contrast. Every time I could interact with y'all, I was seeing like, this is what commitment looks like. This is what it looks like to commit your life to another person, not in perfection. It does cost something. And both parties have decided that that cost is, negligible in comparison to what's gained. And I got to see that very practically lived out as you both were building your life together. So in those moments, even though there's probably things that the two of you look back on and you're like, that was, regrettable. Even in those moments, the ways that that ministered to me was to remind the deepest parts of me that, like, one, there's no other person that can fulfill your deepest desires. That's Jesus. And he was
Mm-hmm.
doing it for me in that moment. And two, when you do find your person, it's not going to be so hard. Like, nobody's going to be making it so stinking hard.
Right.
You'll both do what you need to do to be together and prioritize that. There was so much going on in my mind and in my heart in that era. And it's just the fact that God just put you and your husband right there in those moments. And by the way, like, we've talked about this a little bit. Like, I was not his biggest fan, especially, initially, but
Yeah.
that apartment when we were roommates, that is the place where he became my brother. Like, there was,
Mhm.
I mean, and I shared this, like, there was a specific memory where he had gotten there before you had. I, just happened to walk in and we're sitting in the living room and I was kind of wondering out loud about how can I be rebellious and it not come back to haunt me, essentially. His response was a brother. He was my brother, and he wasn't unkind. He wasn't pious. He was gracious in it, but he was direct. And really from a, like, he's like, here's what I heard you say and here's what I know. Those months leading up to your wedding where I got to experience him in that way, for me as your best friend, having historically not necessarily been totally on board or not fully understanding, like I don't really
Yeah,
understand what's going on here and why you guys whatever. For me to be able to experience those things of seeing you two together and then even just seeing the way that he approached me, recognizing how important of a relationship we have. On your wedding day, it was like the most joyful sending because of getting to experience him in that way. And it's just another gift we got in those moments that we wouldn't have gotten, if we hadn't lived together.
just really sweet opportunities there too.
Yeah. I think we're remiss if we don't paint this picture for the neighborhood, what the day to day looked like. And we've kind of alluded to it, but I feel like we need to paint a picture.
Yes, actual landscape.
Yes. Like you got to know what we were living in. And I've said before, like just sunshiny, but what did that mean to you? What are the things that you carry with you about that place that was just so lovely?
The trees were
Yes.
they just were like these little natural canopies. It's a charming little spot. I was seeing parts of a town that I grew up in from such a different lens during
Yes.
that time because I was walking the street to go places and I had never walked to get around that part of town. So I got to see things from like a physical different perspective. I also had some engagement photos taken walking distance from that house. So just walking and there being the river right by there. I was so quick to be like, I'm out, bye. I'm like moving. I'm starting a new job. I'm starting a new life. Like I'm out of this city. But I think it was a really good time and opportunity that I was able to kind of see this city that I've always known and appreciate some good parts about it before leaving and moving away too.
Yes, it's a part that I keep coming back to. I just wanna be there and sit in it because it is lovely. I was gonna say the same thing at first, the mossy old oak trees, old historic part of town. So these trees have seen some stuff.
Yeah.
And, just the moss hanging from it, super romantic Southern, setting, a little town square that we could walk to, and there's plenty there, whether that was get our coffee or get our brunch or go have, a glass of wine and some apps for dinner or go see a movie or,
Oh, yeah.
just go and have a nightcap. Like those were all walking distance and a very pleasant walk. It was quiet.
Hmm.
Except this actually I appreciated this ambient noise so much at the time. Do you remember the train? There's a train that goes through there.
Yes, I remember kind of being like, "Oh man, that is gonna be so terrible." And then, I mean, anybody that lives by train tracks or an airport or any kind of noise like that, like it's so true. You just don't like it doesn't disturb you the way that you think it will.
No, I mean, and the train, for whatever reason, it felt like the schedule of it as it was crossing the train tracks, it felt like it was always like really early in the morning or late at
Yes.
night, like when you're trying to sleep. But at some point, it just became part of the landscape and just part of my memories. And so it wasn't like, oh, the train's waking me up again. It was like, hey, just part of it.
There it is.
I didn't appreciate how much I love water, like on a cellular level, how much I love water until I moved away from it.
Same.
There is so much water around that area and it's peaceful. There was a very specific spot that I could walk to, and I would go there and take a book and sit under this beautiful old mossy oak tree and just look out at the water and everybody's docks and their boats and just be. It's just a pure memory. It was a slow pace. I didn't feel the pressure of, which is interesting because it is, very near downtown, which is not quiet. And you just didn't feel that way. It was just, you could just feel, I don't know, hominess of it. It
Yeah.
just feels so homey and peaceful and lovely and timeless. It was old. It's an old part of town and it is timeless. Like I would still go back and live there. I let me correct. I'm not going back and living there, but if I had to choose to live there, that's the place I would be living
That's I
if
was
I were there.
gonna say that's honestly it's funny you say that. Like we have said that as we're driving like into town because we pass
Yeah.
it. We would have to pass downtown to get to our parents' house, like when we would drive into town. And
Yeah.
so we would always be like, there's, you know, and our wedding venue and the church, they were all right there. And so like we got to kind of pass, and every time we drive through there, we get, it's just, it all comes back up. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's another sweet memory about that time is it's like you moved out, then because your wedding venue was literal walking distance from my apartment.
Blocks. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
Couple blocks walking distance. One, I was able to just, like, be there if I needed to be there once you were gone, like, while you were, engaged and trying to finalize all that stuff long distance. But then two, like, we got to get ready at my house. And I love that so much. Like, it's just, it's another pure memory where it was like, this was a pretty place to get ready, my little apartment, so it was cute. It made for just a fun, girls' morning where we were getting dressed and had hair and makeup there and just so sweet, and who would have known at the start of that, our other friend had moved away at that point, I think.
Yes.
Yes, she had,
Yep.
because if I'm thinking about when your wedding was,
Mhm.
she had moved away, and so she's kind of the reason that I ended up there to begin with, just because I had gone to visit her and was like, "This is awesome," and tried to find a place in a similar place, so it's like that she was gone, she wasn't there anymore, and it's all, it was all just happenstance. It feels random, but now we can look back on that and go, "Look what God did."
Yeah.
And if it had been different, it would have been different and it would have been equally beautiful, but, like, this was a gift. It's just one of those time capsule moments that's like, nothing can touch this. It's just
Yeah.
lovely. And we didn't plan it. It just happened.
Yeah, like I said, it was like one of those things because we knew it was so finite. It was like everything was a yes. It was like, "You wanna go?" "Yep." "You wanna go do?" "Yep. Let's do it."
Yeah. Yes, you were very good about that too, because you knew you were leaving, so it was like there were lots of, yeah, I felt like I was a little like, "Okay, I have a crazy idea." You're like, "Let's do it."
Yeah. I'm down. Do you feel like there was any, like, lessons that you learned? Like, because after that, you didn't get married for some time, but you lived without a roommate. You never had another roommate after that.
No, you ruined me for all other roommates. Until my husband, obviously,
Right.
who's
I was
amazing,
like,
but
I didn't even stop to think about that until just now. Like, until we moved in with our husbands, we were each other's last roommates.
yes, but also, like, you just imported me to where you moved to anyway, so that's the rest of the story is, like, I was actually laid off from my job when you were getting married, which was,
The plot thickens.
terrible, but also, like, so wonderful because I had some free time, and then, I ended up moving away. Lessons that I learned.
Maybe like when you first moved in with your husband, were you like carrying any of these like habits that you were like, I have to kind of like set these hard and fast expectations? Or were you just like that's not what this is, so I'm going to treat it very differently?
Yeah, I mean, I had a little more roommate experience than you did. I had some roommates, even before our mutual friend. So I do think the leave it better than you found it, that did leave an impact. Like you mentioned, you left the apartment and you were moving away. And the last day, like you left a hairdryer on my bed. And by the way, like the hairdryer that I was using was dying, or we should have put it out to pasture a long time ago, and so I was always using your hair dryer,
Yeah.
and then your response to that was to buy me a hair dryer, which was like, as a parting gift.
Right.
Because you were taking the hairdryer that I was using. Like, it was your hairdryer. But that did leave an impact on me that it was like, "You didn't have to do that." Like, I wasn't even I didn't think one thought about your gratitude. You definitely didn't have to do that. You certainly were not the reason I had a crap hairdryer. Like, so yeah, I think just the consideration of other people, I'm sure my husband has benefited tremendously from that. I think the contrast of the way that you chose to go about the state in which you keep your place. I don't think I will ever aspire to the level of cleanliness that you are. And I don't think I want to, because I just think that's not I think people would be a little concerned because that doesn't really match me very well, like I'm not chaotic, but I'm not either.
Crazy like me.
You're not crazy.
Well, I've like I said, I've learned about myself, and there's reasons not to justify,
Yeah,
but I know the why.
yeah. Well, I mean, you've said in the past too, some of it was you want to make your place welcoming. You don't want to leave any reason for for you to not be able to open your doors. And so it's not just that your mind needs the order, but also like you love people well. And so there's always a consideration of that in the way that you keep your home and stuff like that. But looking back on that time in particular, knowing that God, when he provides us something extra, it's not just for us to high five ourselves and go, "Look at this. This is so great. I have a two-bedroom apartment." Like I had no need for that. And I didn't understand why it was happening. And then I look back and it's like, well, it was for me, but it wasn't for me, you know? And just holding those things with an open hand as far as living situation goes. And I definitely, I think that has played into current situation and decisions that my husband and I have made just with things that we have and things that we can hold open handedly and stuff like that. So yeah, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think with our time together, and even in the living situation before we lived together, and even just observing our friend group, when I was still living at home, I always wanted to be more willing to be that way, like being open handed with things, because I was coming from a place of I'm trying to get through school and I'm trying to work, and it's just I didn't have a lot of expendable things and income, but like everybody else was just so willing to be like, oh yeah, just go in my closet, or oh yeah, like just take that, it's totally fine. And like I was just like, I want to be more like that. So I think it was something that I kind of tucked in memory of, like, I remember witnessing those traits and how I didn't naturally react those ways, but like seeing how that kind of dynamic was played out in a positive way, and how it benefited and just was like a fun environment. Like, if that makes sense. Like, it was just
Yes.
kind of like made for like just a sweet dynamic. Like, it's fun
Yeah.
to kind of be that person's friend who's willing to say, of course, yeah, go. Or I have that. You can borrow it. Like that kind of thing.
Yes. I'm thinking of your roommate's roommate before you. And,
Uh,
like, we were visiting one time, and she was like, "Anne Marie, um, this last banana is here. I've already eaten a banana. Today it's gonna be good, but I think tomorrow it won't be. Do you wanna eat this?" And it was very, like I was like, "What's happening?" And I appreciated it so much because it was like, "I'm thinking of you, and I don't wanna waste this thing." Whereas I would've been like, "That banana's going in the garbage tomorrow." Like, you know?
yeah,
Like, good little things we picked up from people about just yeah.
for sure.
So, well, as we think about, that time for us is over, it's done, and we'll always have it as a memory that we can take out and we can share with others. And now we'll have it memorialized forever, which I love so much, which means that our kids get to hear this someday, which is so crazy to me. And so I wonder, as we think about our kids going into that era, not imminently, but
Yeah.
sooner than we probably would like to accept, like, if you could fast forward to your girls, like, as they're graduating and starting to consider what their living arrangement is gonna be like outside of your home. From this perspective, like, what are the things is there anything that you would wanna share with them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think kind of what I was just saying, like, I hope that it is something that I'm trying to instill in them now. And I think having two girls makes it a little easier because they typically want most of the same stuff. So it lends to a very natural opportunity to teach
Yeah.
patience and just sharing a space. And, soon they'll probably have like similar size and clothes, and they'll want to share the clothes and like all those things. So I hope, like, knowing what this experience taught me, how much more fun it could have been if I kind of like was willing to just kind of like recognize and lean into some things, like encouraging that behavior in them so that when they maybe find themselves in those dynamics, it doesn't feel like a threatening shift or a too difficult of a pivot to say, oh, I have to now
Mhm.
be considerate of somebody else. Like that should already be in their wheelhouse. Of course, I want to see if my roommate wants to come with me, and like that would be fun. Like those type of things where it's like they're naturally self-aware enough to say, like, am I being considerate, and how can I love this person well by being mindful?
To balance that, what I look back on and recognize is, like, just wasn't a lot that we did, super intentionally, consciously. We were certainly intentional about a lot of things that we did, but it wasn't a conscious. We certainly did not have forward-thinking perspective. We wouldn't have dreamed that we would be having this conversation with this perspective.
Right.
And, I want my kids to know, first of all, and I say this often to one of them, like, Helena is my person. She is my person. I love her
Yeah.
dearly. And Imma be okay if, we don't get to talk for a minute. Just because someone is your person doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best thing for you, to live together. You really got to evaluate what's best for both of you and be self-aware and honest. Are you gonna be okay if you don't have your person? And is your person gonna be okay if you're so dependent? And also just, like, celebrating people's differences,
Yeah.
that it is okay that people don't do things the way that you do things. And it's okay that you don't do things the way that people do things. There's something to be learned, on either side of that. God is so good, and he is so creative, and he is
Mhm.
so gracious. And to your point, Helena, it's not always because we ask him.
Right.
He's not bound by our prayers. He certainly wants to invite us into it so that we can see in the moment what he's doing, but he is not absent because we don't pray. Certainly, I'm not trying to discourage anyone from feeling like I think, the best thing you can do is have relationship with your creator. What I mean is, like, there are going to be twists and turns. There are going to be bumps on this journey, and they won't be wasted. So, wherever you find yourself, children of mine and children of Helena's, wherever you find yourself, you're exactly where you need to be. Hopefully, the foundation of knowing how deeply loved you are, that the truest thing about you is that you are loved by a good and perfect creator. Hopefully, you'll have the perspective in the moment of
Mhm.
how thoughtful and careful and present God is. But even if you don't, know that you will look back and go, "Oh, I see. I see." And I could not have drawn that up better. Even the hard parts, even the broken parts, like, wow, look what you did with these broken things. Like the place that I was in when you and I came to live together was really broken. And in some ways, actively trying to pursue more brokenness. Just know that it's not goosebumps. Like, if you
No,
turn to the wrong
it's very
page, you're
different.
not, God is still God. And so you may have a crap roommate. You may be a crap roommate, at a point in your life.
Just gonna keep it
But
real.
yeah, it's okay. Like, God loves you. He loves you, and he is relentlessly pursuing you. And there is something to be gleaned from this era in your life. Don't miss it. But if you do miss it, know that you will have opportunity to look back and go, "Oh, I see what you did there."
It's such the relationship that we have with God, and I kind of feel like it's like this because it's not like like a physical relationship that we have with God. Like we don't sit across from Him and have conversations about, well, what about this and this plan, like we do with our
Face to face, yeah.
right, with our earthly parents. Like think of like it just made me think like could you imagine if like we just operated where our kids were like going through life and they're like suffering and they were like get to a point where they recognize like what they lacked and they're like, well, why didn't you give that to me? You didn't ask me. It's like, well, how like that what a crappy parent we would be. It's like
Yes.
that's our job. It's like we are a little bit older and hopefully a little bit wiser to say like you don't know what you need, but hey, in that next phase of life, you're going to need to get on top of this and this and I'm going to help you do it because you don't even know what's coming your way. Like
Yep.
and so like if you just stop and I think whether it's a roommate situation that kind of fell into place, whether it's a job or, your next phase of life and you're trying to navigate it, if you just take a moment and just reflect, or even if that's not something that you feel like, well, nothing's jumping out at me, it's like that's a beautiful opportunity to say like, Lord, like I want to see you, show me where you have been in my life, where you're currently in my life, like where do you
Yeah.
want me to be next.
I love the "Where were you?" question. That's one of my favorites. "Where were you?" And sometimes it's an angry "Where were you?" And
Oh
sometimes it's
yeah.
just like a, "Hey, I don't recognize, like, where were you?" And he's very gracious to answer those questions.
If there could be a practice kind of developed out of this conversation, sweet children, this was something that kind of we stumbled into, but like how beautiful of an intentional practice.
I'd say that's a good place to leave it, but we do wanna tell you, some of the things that are coming up. We're taking this show international, and we're very excited about it. Lots of conversations already. I say we're taking it international for 1 episode. We're not moving anywhere.
Oh, right.
Um,
No
so
big moves here.
yeah, we have a really incredible opportunity. We didn't ask for it and it just materialized. Part of that opportunity is we get to be in person with our dear friend who lives internationally. We're very excited to introduce you to her. We love her so much, and we know that you will love her too. I can't imagine a person meeting her and not loving her. So she was my roommate, and so she has lived in proximity to me, and I'm part excited and part a little nervous about that.
Oh gosh.
um,
She doesn't have a mean bone in her body. Even when she's being mean, you're like, oh my gosh, that was this kindest mean thing you could have ever said. Also, I don't remember if we said this before, but she will be the first guest that we've had on the
yes.
show. So hopefully a trend that we
Yeah.
can kind of continue with. It's somebody that we love and the conversation's obviously going to be easy because we know each other so well. But yeah, just something different to kind of expect.
Yeah. What's next in general? As we've talked about it, we have topics planned and we sort of move them around as the spirit leads, honestly. There's a lot of prayer that goes into that and just conversation and planning. And this one is one that came up organically, but expect that you're going to hear more storytelling. The podcast is appropriately named. These are our twists and turns. And certainly there are current twists and turns, and we will get to those. But there's a whole lot more that was crazy in fun ways, some of it, in hard ways, in every bit of it, beautiful ways. And we want to share those with you. So expect more twists and turns, expect more storytelling, expect, some international flair coming up very soon. You can live vicariously through us. I would if I were you. We've talked about how we're antisocial as far as social media goes, but we have actually started an Instagram. We'd love for you to follow us. Things that we're learning about how this whole thing works. If you think this is beneficial, there are ways to share it beyond just telling someone. Word of mouth is the best way. It will always be the best way. I don't care what algorithm does what. So tell someone about it. But also, if you think this is something that would benefit others, maybe people you know or maybe people you don't know, the best way to tell the magical algorithm that this should be shared with a broader audience is engagement. And so that means leave us a review, comment on something, and certainly we'd love for you to follow us on Instagram. So it's our handle is Twists and Turns Pretzel Podcast I'll try and find something shorter, but that's what was available. And so that's what we did. So you can find us on Instagram, follow us, share us with friends, and like our stuff. If you like it, if you don't, tell us you don't like it. That's fine too. Engagement is engagement. That's okay. We actually did get some funny feedback that, from a jury of our peers, which I thought was hilarious. And I was like, oh, that's what that looks like. We found the dishwasher police. Apparently, we found the actual dishwasher police. And so, yeah, if you are hearing this, and if me running a half full dishwasher offends you, I promise you this ain't the channel for you, because that is the mildest of things. Like,
I mean,
sorry.
I think this episode should kind of be the segue into how that's like not surprising, right? It's like we kind of like walked in and operated to the beat of our own drum. So it's like, sure, like I was very much like, this is how it needs to be. So should anybody be shocked that one of us, not to name who, would run a half full load of dishes?
Yeah, I'd love to say that that was the worst thing I did in my 20s, and it just wasn't. And you know what? I bet if everybody was honest with themselves, they probably wouldn't want the highlight reel of their worst decisions broadcast for everyone. Let's give everybody some grace. I recognize that water conservation is important. And you know what? I can't do anything about what I did in my early 20s. It's done. So, yeah. Thanks for listening, I guess. But if it offends you, or if you're looking for a fight, just keep it on moving. Just keep it on moving.
We're
Yeah.
not here to defend our water use in our 20s.
From a decade ago, from 15 years ago. Like I can't do anything. We haven't, as far as I'm aware, we haven't created time travel. There's nothing I could do.
You
God
could
bless
use
you,
less water now to counteract and balance.
which I do. And now that I have a whole household, it's very easy to run a dishwasher with a full load. When I was single, a little bit of a different situation. Anyway,
Tis true. Tis true.
we've given that enough airspace.
Right.
Good luck to you. I do want to say in closing that, as we always say, this podcast is our love letter to God. And so we give all glory to him, and it really is our conversation to him. So if it benefits you, wonderful. But know that this is our singing our love song back to the Lord. And so we're just recounting his faithfulness, and that's why we're here. So we're so thankful that you've joined us, and we look forward to you coming along on the next Twister Turn.
Bye, guys.